What's up everybody, Victor here, and it's time for yet another nation guide, this one being for Norway in 1.34. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Now of course the first thing we're going to be talking about is the estates and privileges. At the start of the game you only have 20% crown land, meaning you can only grant 2 of the 3 monarch generators at the start. The good news is you do not want to actually grant the nobility monarch generator, the military one, because you start the game off with 2 privileges right here. Both of these are negative, and you want to get rid of them as soon as possible, not only to avoid the penalties associated with them, but also because you have a mission here that requires you to revoke them. So, you want to get rid of them ASAP. In order to do so, though, you have to have 1 stability, and you have to have more loyalty than influence. And if you look here, even with all of this, I still am not netting over the influence amount in order to revoke them. And by granting this, you would lower your loyalty even more, meaning it's going to be all the more difficult to actually revoke these 2 if you grant this. So just grant the admin one and the Diplo one for now, you'll be fine militarily. The rest of the privileges are pretty simplistic, but I will want to point out one thing though. Because these exempt you from seizing land of the nobility, doing so does not reduce the loyalty of the nobility. So do not worry about seizing land and not being able to revoke these 2 at the same time. It will not stop it. The other privileges that you will be granting though, you have religious diplomats. This gives you the 25 opinion boost with everybody of the same religion, so every Catholic is going to like you better, and those are the people that are going to likely be supporting your independence. As far as patronage of the arts, you will also be scornfully insulting Denmark, and you need that in order to get over the 0 to actually do so. To again, get more people to support your independence and make them like you. Free enterprise is just for the loyalty, just to get it over the 50% threshold. If you want to grant anything else in here instead, you absolutely can. Indebted to the burghers works too if you want to get the loans out for that, but that is completely optional. And then as far as the nobility, you have supremacy over the crown, and you have the monopoly. The monopoly is only 10 ducats worth, so it's not huge, meaning you're only going to be losing about 2.5 to 3 ducats over a 10-year period, so it really doesn't impact your economy, but it is 10 free loyalty, so I would highly recommend granting it. As far as supremacy over the crown, this allows you to pursue agendas because they will fire naturally and not summon the diet. The reason why I am not summoning the diet now is because it also gives 5 influence for 20 years, and I want to be able to revoke these far sooner than that. So if you don't want to be dealing with this and having to push this even higher, making these revoked harder, do not click to summon the diet, and it can either spawn through the supremacy of the crown, or you'll be able to do it through a government reform later, and I'll talk about that when it comes up. But for now, that's all you really need to know about your estates and privileges. So let's go ahead and move on to your military setup. Your military setup is pretty quick and easy. You see, all you're going to do is take your army, hire 2 infantry, put a general in charge. It really doesn't matter if they're any good or not, because by doing so, you will be completing this mission right here, because all it does is require you to have a general. Again, doesn't matter if he's good, and at least 100% of your force limit, and 2 infantry will get you there. After that is done, though, just turn off your army, merge your navies together, and that's it for the military. You will be building 4 light ships, but you'll be doing it either one of 2 ways. Either you'll be taking out loans through the burgher loans down here, or in the alternative, you'll be getting the money from this right here, Norwegian allies. And that's going to be taking us into the diplomatic side of it, so let's go ahead and talk about your diplomatic start. Your starting diplomacy is going to be entirely dependent on who does Denmark hate and who hates Denmark. As you can see in this game, there is a lot of people that seem to overlap both of those roles, so they seem to mutually hate each other. But I have England, Lithuania, Poland, and then Novgorod over here hates Denmark, though Denmark doesn't really hate them. Meaning that when I go in here to look for who's going to support my independence, I have England, Lithuania, and Novgorod's pretty close. However, if you recall, Poland was on that list too, so why are they not actually being willing to help? Because for whatever reason, Poland and Burgundy down here, who's another person that typically wants to hate Denmark, they both think they can't reach Denmark, though Lithuania can. So it's not sea border, because Burgundy has one, and it can't be anything else, just randomly Poland and Burgundy cannot reach you. So if you see them, you're not going to be able to grab them very easily, but this mission here, it's shining, but don't click it yet. It will allow you to pick up Burgundy or Poland, and this is especially nice because it'll let you pick up Burgundy to support your independence and make them an ally when you declare it, and if they hate both France and Austria, then it is likely you can even pick up the Burgundian inheritance as Norway. But let's go ahead and talk about how to do so. Simply put, in order to get them involved with this mission, which will give you an event that can give you a couple of options, including letting them ignore this negative 1,000 reasons to support your independence, you have to have them have 100 opinion of you before you click the button. Simplest way to do that, go to Denmark and scornfully insult them. Another way to do that is to, again, have the religious diplomat's privilege, because this will boost it by an additional 25. The rest of it's simply you're improving relations. That's all you need to do. So I'm going to go ahead and improve relations with Novgorod here, even though I really don't want them as an ally, and with Poland. And I'll talk about why I'm going to do that, but I have to actually wait a bit to get my diplomats back and improve relations, though I do have Lithuania and England over 100 at this point. So I'm going to go ahead and start improving relations with these two, and I'm going to pause the recording because I need to go and wait for this to happen so I can show you the event. See you guys in just a second. And welcome back, everybody. So I now have Poland over 100. They picked up the Lithuanian personal union, so they're no longer supporting my independence. And I can grab Novgorod, but I'm not going to in this instance. And the reason why is once I click this button, it kind of makes itself a little bit clearer. You have a couple of options here. And this will work with anybody that is a rival or rivaled by Denmark that also has at least 100 opinion of you. The first option is that you ask them to support your independence. So since I already have England, they're obviously going to refuse because they're already doing it. Poland, on the other hand, will pick it up sometimes. It's not a guarantee that they'll do it, but if they like you over 100, they're already wanting to help you. Just look in here and see if the reasons are more than the negatives, minus, of course, the 1,000 reasons, because it ignores that 1,000 reasons. Then there is they give you manpower, which is okay. Then there is you get 200 ducats, and then they will give you an additional 100, but again, it's kind of a coin flip. And then you will fight them on your own. You'll get all these bonuses here if you have no allies at all, including Sweden. And then lastly, you just lose a bunch of liberty desire. So why would you want to pick anything but them joining you? Because sometimes it'll be something like England, Lithuania, Novgorod, but all three of them are willing to join you and Poland doesn't grab Lithuania. In that instance, picking the first one really doesn't help you, but the 200 ducats will let you build your fleet. So depending on who these rivals are, if you're able to pick them up, if you look at Burgundy and they don't hate Austria or France, they're likely to fall under the personal union and go through the Burgundian inheritance. So they're not great to pick up long term, but it's up to you. In other instances, you desperately need to click this top one because it's Poland, Burgundy, and Scotland who will never help you no matter what. The other ones that can show up on here are the Teutonic Order, every once in a while the Livonian Order, but really it's England, Scotland, these two, Poland, Lithuania, Burgundy, and Novgorod. Those are the ones I've seen most of these times, and I've restarted this about 80 times to make certain there wasn't anybody else that'll pop up, or that Denmark will grab really strong allies. The only time they grabbed anybody of any strength was Muscovy, and that was one time. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and ask them to support me. Poland is now supporting my independence. England says no, but not exactly surprising. And now I'm ready to declare. Now, before I actually do, I'm going to pick up this alliance with Sweden. They get an event before the end of the first month that'll let them ally you, but if you ally them, they can actually call in the people supporting you, meaning I wouldn't be able to get Poland, and if you are already at war when you click this, you do not get those choices. It's just a dead event. So click this before you declare, click this one so you get these bonuses, but you're still not actually going to be doing anything. It's time to declare, and once I get my diplomat back anyway, I'm going to do so. Now again, I'm not actually doing anything. I'm simply going to turn off my economy and just sit in the corner. Now, since I was not able to get the 200 ducats from clicking that other option, I'm going to take out the burger loans and I'm going to build the 4 light ships because I need to complete that other mission as soon as practically possible. I will explain why once I have, because, well, it's not just because I really want to see Greenland, though I do really want to see Greenland. But for now, click the button, get your stability back, get some extra legitimacy for your guy, because this guy is random. I got lucky with a 444. I've had a 010, so you may want to restart depending on how garbage this guy happens to be. But with that, I'll see you guys in just a little bit. And welcome back, everybody. So I realized I forgot to talk about a couple of things before I declared the war, so I'm going to go ahead and talk about them now. First off, if you cannot get Poland or Poland-Lithuania to support your independence, either they refuse to assist you through the event, or in the alternative, they're just not a rival of or rivaled by Denmark, then just start improving relations with them during the war. The reason why is if you can get to about 100 to 120 opinion with them, they should be willing to roll marry you, which will then lead to an alliance. Second, again, don't ally Novgorod. They're almost always going to get jumped by Muscovy, and if they're pulled into a war against Denmark, even with everybody else, they'll just be allied to you, so suddenly you'll be attacking Denmark while Muscovy's sieging out half your country. Right now, you can just completely ignore everything. Lastly, take your diplomat and go start improving relations with Austria. You're going to want to do this for later, and I'll get to why when I get there. And then finally, spy on Scotland, get a claim down. While France might still defend Scotland, there's 2 reasons why you want to do this. One, France might decide not to. They may be in a war against Castile or against Austria or somebody else, and they just do not want to get involved in another war. So they will not actually honor the call. So you're going to be keeping an eye on Scotland because if you can jump them, fantastic. The other reason why is because France will eventually tap out of a war if they're called in as an ally to a defender. It will take about 5 years. And during that time, they're going to be trying to cross over. So if you can hold this channel here, they can't get to you, allowing you to then peace out France and take Scotland on one-on-one. This takes a very long time, and you really cannot afford to attack anybody else during that time, though. So pick your time well on when you want to try and do this to Scotland. If you can have England come in too, that's fine, because they will help take on the Scottish army, and their navy should be able to hold the channel too, meaning you're going to be a lot more secure having the English involved. Now that I have these ships built, though, let's talk about this other mission. You see, I've seen a guide where they said to hold off on this because they don't want to waste the Explorer, but here's the thing. As you can see here, I have not discovered America. I click this, I have discovered America, meaning I'm having extra splendor gain of an extra 2 instead of 1 to make it 3, just so I can click these all the sooner. And you're really going to want this one. So get this moving, get it going, because the sooner you have the ability to take one of these splendor bonuses, the better off you're going to be. Especially this one, because you're going to be colonizing as Norway. I'm pretty sure all of you plan to anyway. Now, during this war, you can still explore. That's the weird thing, is because Denmark really doesn't have a strong enough navy to challenge you and Sweden, let alone anybody else involved. You can still send this explorer out to Fogbust over here in Canada and the Hudson Bay. So send them out and they'll actually go off and do it. They won't care about the war because they're far enough away and they don't have to worry about it. And then once you are done actually fog busting, this admiral is actually very useful to try and challenge the Danish Navy over here to actually make it onto Zealand to get even more war score. So I'm going to pause the recording because I need to actually play this out, and it's going to take a little bit. And really, you're just going to be watching me sit there and do nothing because I'm not getting involved. So I will see you guys in a little bit. And welcome back, everybody. So this war is now done. And in it, I'm going to be getting my independence. I'm taking war reps because, well, if you look here, out of the 120 ducats that I'm taking out of them, I'm only going to get 5 because I didn't really participate. So I'm not taking any money. Even though I have free war score, I'm not taking it because I don't want Sweden or anybody else to get paid when I don't. What I am going to be doing, though, is taking these 2 provinces because both of these are trade centers, which will allow me to buoy my economy for a very long time. And I'm handing these 2 over to Sweden. The reason why is because that will make them happy and it'll make it so I do not have the debuff for the next 30 years where I broke a promise to give land. Because this is an independence war, even if they're allies and they were also subjects, I am promising to give them an equal share of the land of their contribution. Since I didn't contribute, I actually have to give them something because they did. But I'm still able to take this for myself, which is all I really need. Now this has a couple of benefits to it. First off is that, well, it's in Lubeck trade node, and these are centers of trade, which should hopefully boost up the amount of trade power I have in the area. Unfortunately, I was dumb, and right before doing this, I ended up teching up because of reflexes. So try and not tech up right before you take provinces like this, because, well, it's obviously bad. But I need to now core this up before I can show you the next real benefit, which, if you guys haven't guessed, involves the HRE, because as you can see here, my development is not really that high. And I'm still able to join the HRE if a couple of conditions are met. So I'll bring you guys back once I have it ready to go and I can show you the next step. See you in a second. And welcome back, everybody. So it's been a couple of years, and during that time I've cored things up and gotten everything situated to where we can now talk about the HRE and these northern German states that are going to be stealing money from you the entire game if you don't do something about it. You see, no matter what you choose to do, no matter how you choose to play this game, whether it's colonial or straight expansion, no matter what, the Lubeck trade node is the heart and soul of your economy. Going to conquer Russia all the way to China? Yeah, all the trade goods and the nodes are going to flow straight back to Lubeck. Going to go pure colonial and take over all of North America? Well, guess what? It all flows into Lubeck. And with these provinces and the centers of trade just in the HRE down here, they will have enough trade power, especially since Lubeck is hyper-aggressive right now and will conquer as much of it as they can. Yeah, they're going to control about half to 75% of the trade power unless you heavily contest it with light ships. Which, it's just easier to take them out, to join the HRE and wipe these tags off the map and control it yourself. And that is why we're improving relations with Austria, because by taking Jalen, you can. You see, in order to join the HRE, you have to, quote, be connected to the Empire, meaning your capital has to have a land connection to the HRE. Simple enough. Well, you cannot simply skip like this to join the HRE. So what you have to do is, instead of having your capital in Akershus, you have to move it to Zeeland. That simple. So once your capital is over here, you can now join the HRE, because as you can see, the requirement there that says I'm not connected is no longer there. Now, before you actually move your capital, which should cost you about 200 admin, so it's not prohibitively expensive, increase the autonomy in the state. This will drop your unrest by 10, but once you move the capital, the autonomy is set to 0 anyway. So you get to ignore the 10 unrest that would normally be there without actually having to pay any of the penalty to get that down. Once it's moved, though, all you need to do is get Austria to like you enough so you can join, which is why you do not take more land here. Not only is it not generally worth it for over here in North Jutland, but then if you take a lot of high development provinces, it's just going to drive up the opinion cost to join the HRE, and you can always take it later. So it's not overly important to take this land now. Now, I would simply scornfully insult one of their rivals, in this case, probably the Ottomans, because they're so far away I don't care, and join and be good. Unfortunately, I had a 010 air pop-up, and out of sheer reflex, I immediately chucked them out the window. Meaning I don't have any prestige, which is even worse because my diet mission is to have prestige, so I can't do that. But instead, as long as Denmark had any decent allies, which in this case I believe was just, it was just the Teutonic Order, and them, I was able to get over 1 ducat a month in war reps, plus the trade income. I'm fine. You should have an economy able to save up enough money to pay off Austria to make them like you, and I'm still making 3 ducats after still hiring 1 into the advisors. So you should be able to do this. So just throw some money at the problem, get them to like you enough to let you join the HRE, and you will be fine the rest of the game. Not only will you be able to dominate the Lubeck trade node, and your economy will be amazingly good, allowing you to continuously colonize the New World, but you'll be able to expand wherever you choose to go, because not only will they have to fight you and Denmark and Sweden, because you should have them too. But Poland and Lithuania, and then Austria, Bohemia, and Hungary, if Austria actually gets them, so you won't be attacked by anybody. They're never going to try. Not until Austria rivals you will they actually try to do so. So just try and get yourself into the HRE as quickly as you can, because it'll definitely save your game and make it substantially easier. With that being said, I'm going to go through a couple of set topics in here, so you might see some jumps in here, because instead of making one long recording, it's easier for me to make several. So let's go ahead and begin. And here's the CD key for this video. If you want to redeem a copy of this game, just be the first person to redeem this CD key into Steam, and you'll be the one to get it. All I ask is that you please comment on this video that you're the one that got the game. With that being said, let's jump back to the video. Let's talk about Novgorod. You see, while Novgorod was willing to help me get my independence, and I really didn't want them to because they'll usually pull you into a war with Muscovy, after that war with Muscovy, they are an amazing person to rival. The reason why is they'll have no army, no manpower, and no economy after the war with Muscovy, meaning you could easily walk in and pull a humiliate to get prestige and power projection, or a show strength if your ruler is garbage to get some free monarch points, or if you don't need either of those, to take these three provinces. Why these three? Because this third one down here is a Novgorod core with Novgorodian culture. And if you have those two things combined, once they're off the map, and trust me, Muscovy will conquer this, and Sweden might even conquer some of it too, you can then release Novgorod and reconquer those cores. Meaning, all that work that Muscovy just did, you can reverse. In particular, you can stop them from taking Novgorod itself, denying them the ability to ever form Russia. Taking an entire massive threat off the board, meaning you won't have a threat to your east, and you can do largely whatever you want, either continuing to push east to China, or to completely ignore the rest of Asia and focus on colonial. So you don't have to go this route, but it is definitely something I would recommend, because it's incredibly easy just to dunk on Russia before Russia even exists. But that's what you can do with Novgorod, because really they're not worth anything else other than easy clay, or easy monarch points, or easy prestige. So let's go ahead and turn to other things. Let's go ahead and turn our attention to Scotland. Now, as I explained before, what you're trying to do with this claim that you fabricated on your own is simply watch to see if France is going to get themselves in a war where they won't defend Scotland. This can be attacking Burgundy, or Austria, or Castile, or Aragon, but it just really has to be something where they're taking a lot of casualties, or a lot of attrition, or they attack somebody that could actually occupy their provinces back. And in this case, as you can see, they're already up to 16 out of the 31 that I'm going to need for them to not come in. However, even in this instance, I would still attack them, even if France joined in. The reason why is all you're trying to do is attack them before you personal union Denmark, which is going to happen in a couple of years. So why now? Well, right now, Scotland has no real army, meaning I can have England come in and occupy Scotland and not have to worry about anything. But I still have Sweden as an ally too, and as long as I do not call Sweden in, they will never allow France to walk over their territory to attack me, an ally. Meaning, while they might be able to get to this province and this one over here, if they can get naval dominance to actually cross this little strait here, they'll never make it to my actual territory up here, meaning they might occupy me a bit, but not enough to win the war. That's all I need. After about 6 years, France will take a white piece and just tap out. If you can occupy all of Scotland, especially if England can, in about 5 years, you'll get a 100% war score and take whatever you want. And that's all you need to do. It doesn't matter how much of Scotland you take, as long as it's one province, you can then re-release Scotland and either use favors from England to get the provinces back from them, or use reconquest and take from England that way. Meaning you'll be able to get all of Scotland without much difficulty. Now, you do have a mission in here which requires you to have at least 8 provinces in the land that is Scotland or the Isles. And what it does is it triggers this Administration of Scotland event. What this event basically does, you have to not have Gaeldom exist, so you cannot use them as a subject. So use Scotland or take control of it yourself. But once you hit that event, it will then give you the option of forming Gaeldom as a march. So not just normal vassal, but a march. And in exchange for doing so, you get one extra Diplo relation slot, so an extra ally or vassal or whatever it happens to be, for the rest of the game. Whether you think it's worth it or not is up to you, but you'll still be able to go through, and just the mission itself gives you claims on all of Ireland and then Northern England. Which means you're going to be very, very easy to restore the Danelaw and get that achievement done, or really just conquer the British Isles too, so you'll be able to then start pushing into the English Channel node on top of also the Lubeck node. Meaning you will be rich beyond comparison without any difficulty. But that is how you handle Scotland. So let's go ahead and turn to other things. Let's go ahead and talk about some specific strategies on how to get rid of these two bad privileges from the game start. Danish nobility and nobles court. You see, you want to get rid of these not just because they're bad for you, because they cause a lot of penalties, but you also want to get rid of these as soon as possible because, well, you're required to complete this mission. This is the one that will give you the Parliament government reform from very early in the game, which is very, very nice. You'll get really specific bonuses that you get to choose, like crown land or extra colonists and settlers, that make it really easy to start going in the direction you want to go at any given time. Then there's also, it is a requirement to get this mission, which will give you a PUCB on Sweden if you do it right, which of course you want. So you can't do these two things until these are revoked. Now, if you recall, I did end up trashing my prestige because I had a 010 pop up and I threw them immediately out the window. The thing is that even if I was able to complete this diet mission, it wouldn't be enough to revoke these things. I'm still about 1.1% short to actually revoke anything. So how do you make up that difference? Well, there's a couple of ways. One, do another diet mission. Simple enough. Or sell titles. You get some loyalty, you're able to revoke. Simple enough. There's also random events that can pop up that will give you nobility loyalty or dropping their influence, and you can use those and hopefully time them right where you're able to revoke things because of them. However, there is actually a little bit more easy ways to do it in your government reforms on tier level 2. First, you have the Grant Noble Castle rights. This will give you 5% more loyalty in the nobility every time you construct an up-to-date fortification. In exchange, you get 20% reduced fort maintenance, but you also get 5% more influence in the nobility, which is not great. It means that in order for me to get up to high enough where I can actually revoke without doing anything else, I'd have to spend 800 ducats building forts. Not a good option. But it is there if you already plan on building a lot of them. Next, we turn to the Noble Officer Corps. This is a great privilege to have. It does still increase it by 5%, but it makes it so every time you roll a general, you gain 2% extra loyalty. Since most people are going to roll multiple generals to try and get a decent one, if you time this with having high loyalty otherwise, you can use that and completing a diet mission or a random event or selling titles to try and roll a good general while also ending up being able to revoke these things. Now, do not roll generals simply to revoke these privileges. You'll end up behind in tech, especially if you're going as far as 12, because that's a lot of rolling generals and a lot of military power. But it's still a good privilege, a good government reform to have otherwise, because yearly army tradition and a little bit of professionalism yearly is very nice to have. The best option, though, is actually curtail noble privileges. Dropping the nobility influence by 10% makes it so it's very easy to get that last bit somewhere to just finish it off at some point. Now, I know a lot of people are going to say yes, but it's tax modifier. The thing is, tax modifier isn't as bad, especially early game as Norway, as you might think it is, for a couple of reasons. First, it does actually stack with regional councils because the age unique state edict that you get from regional councils in the Age of Discovery is 50% more tax modifier in that state. So you'll end up with 65% increase every time you activate it. On top of that, it'll end up dropping your state maintenance by 33%, and since edicts just increase it by an extra 100%, it'll make it cheaper and you'll end up having more income in the early game. And since tax is the by far biggest chunk of your income, it'll make you a lot more money. However, it's not just that. A lot of people assume that tax is bad because it doesn't scale, but what they don't realize is that when you go to burn your admin dev, right here, it gives you money so you can build buildings. This is not based solely on the amount of dev that you have. This is based on the tax income you're getting in that state. So by simply revoking Danish nobility, which is dropping the tax income by 11.5%, again, another reason to revoke it, but by doing that or getting your crown land up and etc., or building temples, taking the government reforms here, you're ending up increasing the amount of tax you get in this place, allowing it so when you burn the development, you get more ducats up front. Meaning if you do it right and you time this right, when you need to build things like manufactories, you can use this to get more money to build more faster. And since you can swap out of these later on to something more useful to you later, for only 50 government reform, it is absolutely worth it to do so. So don't hesitate to use early tax modifier, because this will absolutely make it so you can actually afford to colonize, as well as later on allow you to end up starting to play more towards trade and more towards playing tall. So it's a very nice privilege to have. So before I wrap up this guide, let's briefly discuss a couple of these missions that I really haven't gone into depth enough, so that you can make proper decisions about your priorities, but also because some of it is tips and tricks that'll just make your life generally a lot easier. First things first, the Please the Burghers here. This just requires you to complete 2 agenda missions from the burghers. Obviously, you're more focused on the nobility early on to get rid of these 2 things, but you still have to complete burgher ones. The reason why you're not focused on this is because the burgher privilege, the mountain expansion, all this does is it takes the 35% development cost and gives you half of that off. That's all the privilege does. So instead of it being a 35% penalty, it'll add, while remaining the 35% penalty, it'll add a 17.5% discount on top of that, meaning it only increases it by 17.5%. So it's still not worth developing in pretty much any circumstance, but it's not as bad. So because of that, it's not as important to complete this mission. Now you do still want to do it because down here you'll get 4 years worth of trade income, which if you're in the age of imperialism or the age of revolutions, should be stupidly high. So having this done at that point, definitely worth it, but it's not a priority in any way unless you really are committed to playing tall in the mountains. Next, let's talk about Win Our Independence. This will give you a restoration of Union CB on Denmark. It only lasts 20 years. So obviously you want to wait until this truce expires to then click it and then declare, because that way you'll know whether or not your allies will come in. If you click it now, you'll have substantially less time to actually pull it off. However, during that time, you want to take your diplomat and improve relations, because you can still improve relations, and while it will decay during the war, it'll still start off with being, say, improved by 80 instead of 0, meaning it's a lot less likely that your ruler will die and it will be below 0 opinion. Use that so if you have any risk of the ruler dying, they will not leave you and you'll have to do it again. Next, right before you peace them out, if you have the prestige, find one of their rivals, in this case Novgorod is a great one, and scornfully insult them, because that's an extra 25 opinion for free. Yes, it will decay, but you'll have that extra time after the war to improve the relations by another 100 or 100 plus of whatever it decayed by, and this is not a long war, meaning it really shouldn't be difficult to maintain Denmark as a personal union. This will also lead you into the Norway-Denmark, which will give you a personal union CB on Sweden so long as you put one over Denmark, and do the exact same thing to them. Improve relations with them beforehand, scornfully insult one of their rivals, in this case it'd probably be the Livonian Order because I don't care about them, and they should have higher opinion of you at the end of the war. And on top of that, their liberty desire is usually also insanely high. The way you handle that, conquer Gotland for them, enable loyalists, have the higher opinion, and of course, if need be, dev their provinces, especially Dalaskogan here, because it's definitely a province you want to have high developed, and you'll eventually be integrating them or inheriting them, which means every time you dev click them to get that 5% off the liberty desire, means you're gonna get that development yourself anyway. The last thing I really wanted to talk about is colonization, because you can get 5 colonists as Norway pretty easily. You can get 3 by both expansion and exploration. You can get 1 more in your national idea set, and you can get 1 out of the parliament. But early on, especially, you cannot afford that remotely. So it's not that important for you to take even expansion or exploration ideas as Norway early on, because you can get 2 colonists through the parliament and the national ideas without any problems. You can even get your own explorers and conquistadors without exploration at all. So it's not actually that necessary to take normal colonization ideas. Meaning you can still be lethal to Russia while colonizing and not, well, keeping up with Castile or Portugal, at least not falling too far behind. And then once your economy really starts rolling in about 50 years, when you integrate these 2 guys, you can then start affording all 5 of them. So don't be in too big a rush to colonize, because every time I tried to, there was not only no point, because there's no competition in the north, but on top of that, your economy just can't handle it, and it slows down your expansion everywhere else. So just don't worry too much about colonization of Canada, because it's just really going to be you. But with all that being said, you guys should be good to go. If you like this kind of content, like and subscribe. I'll definitely be making more nation guides. But with all that being said, thank you all for watching. I hope everybody has a wonderful day.